let me start by just quickly going through what is Jedox, right? What you see on the screen right now is the login page for Jedox. I'll quickly gonna log in. And Jedox, as Zed was explained before, it's a really an enterprise performance management solution that includes planning, reporting, and analytics into one solution. There's multiple components into it. I'm not going to focus on some of those components. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the key highlights and how Jedox interacts with Power BI and other components of it. So let me start by quickly showing you what Jedox is really good at when we look at not the Power BI integration, but mainly on what I like to call the Excel-like reports. So with that idea, you're always going to have your tabular-like report, like the one that you see on the screen, where you have your columns and rows, and some of the other technologies out there, like Power BI, sometimes they struggle creating reports that are very Excel-like, as you can see on the screen. What are the key advantages of Jedox? These type of reports are out of the box. I can interact with them in many different ways of it. For example, I can expand and collapse my chart of accounts. So I can drill down into the lowest chart of account, in this case, because I'm looking at a P&L, into the lowest level of the information that I'm looking at. I can also drill through into the data so I can see the actual transactions that generates a particular number. In this case, it's just a bunch of adjustments. So it allows me to explore my data beyond just the visualization, because again, visualizations are good for telling a story, but in here, in this case, I just wanna see my report, my accounts against last year, my budget, forecast, and so on. I can interact even more with this report. I can add, for example, I can have comments. So one of the things that I will explain in just a few more seconds is how you can interact with Jedox from a planning perspective that is not just entering your numbers, but you can also add the workflow component and commentary, so then you can enrich the type of data that you're entering. I can zero suppress, meaning I can just get rid of some of the lines that they don't have any values. In that way, my reports becomes really clean. Again, just from a visualization point of view. And of course, it's not just about P&L. I can also have other type of KPIs that I can bring from different models around the system. So this, from a reporting perspective, I'm not going to go through all the other things and all the other nice things you can do from a reporting perspective. Let's just focus on the planning component. And for the planning component, I'm just going to start with a very simple planning model, which is what we call simple planning. Oh, sorry, wrong link. And what you see in the screen right now, if you're familiar with potentially your existing planning process, when you have multiple spreadsheets, each spreadsheet represents a particular cost center or a particular division, and you're sharing that spreadsheet across via email. The only difference between each of those spreadsheets is just that the division is different. But then the structure in terms of what you want them to enter, most likely 95% of the cases is very similar. So what this screen is trying to replicate is you don't need to be sending those spreadsheets. Every single line here in this status monitor represents that spreadsheet that you were sending. And the only thing that it does is because I can then go into one and it will automatically filter into that particular country, because in this case it's filtered by country. In the context of maybe what you're doing, each country could represent a spreadsheet. So you can see now that you don't need to maintain thousands and thousands of spreadsheets. The only way that you do that, it's actually playing around with the tool in Jedox where that information gets stored. So once now I'm in the real planning template where I'm able to, in this case, just to give a little bit more context, it's a manufacturing company. They want to be selling their different products. So they have bikes, components, clothing, accessories. And the idea is I can drill down, similar to what I showed you before in that report, where I can drill down to look at individual SKU, or I can group them to their different product groups and product subgroups. What I'm doing planning, in this case, I want to enter a particular number, right? And I can do planning in two different ways. I can do it from a bottom up, meaning I want to enter a particular value for a particular SKU, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to say it's going to be 450. And as I'm entering that 450, it keeps rolling up to their parents and their parents, and so on. Of course, that depending on how many SKUs or how many P&L lines you have, it could be very, very tedious. So what I'll do now, it's the other way around. It's the opposite. I'll do a top down. approach. And in this case, I'm going to quickly delete these values, so it starts from scratch. And I'm going to say I want this to be at the top level. I don't care about how I'm going to distribute those numbers. I just want to be selling, whoops, wrong with the 0. I just want to be selling 45,000 elements. And what you see here in the screen is that Jedox automatically distributes those numbers, so that 45K, across every single children in order to add up to the 45,000, which means that then you can combine the bottom-up approach with your top-down approach in one single solution. On top of that, and I'm quickly going to show you here what we call the planning assistant, because probably you notice, because I'm going a little bit fast, you will notice that I enter a few commands. Well, those commands are basically a shortcut to what the planning assistant does. And the planning assistant is the real crux of what Jedox can do. It's years and years of R&D where we grab all the different planning scenarios that you're trying to achieve. You are copying data from last year to this year, or you want to do a zero-based budget, or you want to predict based on certain history. All of that, it's included in here. As you can see, everything that I was talking, there's different drop-downs or different selections that you can choose, and that will allow you to then replicate that planning scenario at any level. I can do it at the SKU level, I can do it at the top levels of all articles, or even I can just do it at the Q3 level. So what I'll do is I'm going to delete. And from a planning purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what, let's just copy from last year's values. So then you will see that every single column represents the same values actuals. But I'm going to say it's going to be a 15% increase over last year. And on top of that, I'm going to say, I know that we're going to sell another 1,000 accessories. I don't care where they're coming from. I know that Q3 will deliver that, so I'm going to add those into that. Not only I can enter the values, but also I can store text, right? And why text is important? Because it allows you to complement your story, right? We look at the history, we see that you haven't sold any accessories over the last year, but now you're telling me that you're going to be selling 1,000. So what I can do is I can explain why I'm going to be selling 1K, and there's a new customer that's in the pipeline, and I can have that information stored into the system, which means that when I go into the future and I want to go back and see why did I enter that 1,000, I can get that information from here directly. Other things that I can do that are very interesting from a planning perspective, let's say I'm going to change this number to 45 now, and then I'm going to change it back to 50, for example. I can right click and I can drill history, and I can see the changes that I've done over that particular cell. So if you think about it from an Excel point of view, there's no way to trace what was the original value, what changes would I've made, and so on. Right? So from a planning perspective, again, if you think about the planning process itself, Jedox tries to automate and make your planning life easier by helping you with the planning assistant, with all the different features of drill through, drill history, and so on. But not only that, because the other big challenge that you have with Excel spreadsheets, that Excel spreadsheets can be changed. With workflow, which is what the next thing I'm going to introduce, with workflow, then you can control what people can do and what people are doing within this particular template. So as you can see right now, I have all the cells for the budget being enabled that I can change them. So what I'll do now is I'm going to send this report for review. And what's going to happen is the columns are going to get, of course, sorry, I need to do it here. What's going to happen is I'm going to then enter a comment. So send for review. Oops, I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to proceed. So I just sent it for review. Now, as you can see, I started the process at the beginning. For some reason, it's a little bit stuck. I can see here, it's still running. Okay, for some reason, it's taking a little bit longer. I don't know what's, oh, there we go. So done. So I'm gonna close. I'm gonna go back to the report, and now you see that all the cells are being blocked for change. If I go back to look at my status monitor, I will see that now Austria is being sent for review. I can see that it has a 36.9% increase corresponding to last year's. actuals. So it gives me that single view of where all these spreadsheets are actually going. What is the status? And I can just simply, in one single view, see what everything is going on with my planning process. Of course, I can continue then approving, rejecting. Given the fact that I'm an admin, I have access to everything, of course, but you can see that this could be filtered depending on the different things that you might be doing in terms of different groups and security and so on. And again, I'm not going to go into that detail because I could spend hours and hours talking about that. So now that I've done my plan, in this case it was just for Austria, but I've done my plan in Jedox. Now I want to visualize it. I want to create some dashboards. I want to be able to interact with that data. And this is where I'm going to switch over to Power BI. And how does this work? It's basically Jedox becomes another source for Power BI. If you're familiar with Power BI, you have a button where you can add new sources. In this case, I'm going to add a new source. It's an OData feed. You can read more about OData and how does it work. It's a standard definition for exchanging data across different systems. And what I'll do is I'm going to choose, in this case, the connection to my system, which is POC Minerva, so cloud.jedox.com, and I'm going to choose just one database because otherwise it would just be way too much information. When I click OK, what it will do is it will connect to Jedox, and it will give me all the different cubes and data that I have available. As you can see, there is quite a bit, but I'm just going to focus on this one, which is my sales data. So what you see on the screen is a quick view of my data. I can see the values, the different dimensions. I have version, month, measure, product, and region. And what you're usually going to do is, okay, now that I have the data, I want to transform it. So now I can start doing all the different data wrangling activities, removing columns. For example, I don't need this column, so let's just get rid of it. I'll remove it. So I can start doing all the things that I can do with Power BI and use Jedox as the source. One thing you will notice is that in that version dimension, I have my budget, I have my actuals, and as I'm scrolling, it's actually going back to the system, to Jedox, to retrieve the data. So as you're changing it, it's actually also changing in here. And I'll show that in just a few seconds. So I'm not going to build, once you have this, right, and basically I can add it in. If I can quickly show here, I think this one will probably take a few seconds. So I'll just leave it there. As you can see, it's extracting the data. What I'll do is I already have a pre-built report with the same data that I was showing you before. So I have here my sources. This dashboard is built using the data coming from Jedox. Of course, I can interact with the dashboard. One thing you will notice that I'm using actually Power BI Desktop. So this is a desktop Windows app. Most of you probably are interacting with Power BI through the web, and I'll show you how to do that in just a few seconds. So once you are in this report, it's been built. I have my data coming from Jedox. I can refresh it, so basically get the new values from Jedox. But the most important thing when you think about sharing and collaboration, you don't want people to be interacting with the reporting in Power BI Desktop. So for that, we use the publish button, right, where we can publish this report into our environment, in this case, in our Jedox and Power BI workspace. Again, if you're not familiar with Power BI and how it works, I suggest that you have a quick look at the way that I'll explain some of the basic components, but it basically my environment has this workspace called Jedox and Power BI. So I can publish it, and this report will get converted into an actual web report. So I'll switch back into the web. And now you can see my Power BI environment, which is the one I have on the web. I have my Jedox and Power BI. And just for compliance, I didn't publish it just because it takes too much time. The report itself is quite heavy. So I'll open the sales and dashboard. And what you see, it's basically the same report that I was showing you on the Power BI desktop. It is still connected to Jedox. There's still the data is coming from Jedox, so I can still interact with it as if it was the Power BI desktop. But the beauty of this is now it's on the web, so then I can interact and take advantage of all the other features that Power BI has. I can collaborate using Teams. I can export it into a PDF. I can share it. I can automate that process of manually refreshing the data and so on. So as you can see, I can get the data, create a dashboard, and then publish it to the web. Not only that, and I'll go back into here, not only that, but I can also add different sources. So not everything needs to be Jedox. And I'll quickly show you an example where I'm going to connect to a Snowflake instance. Snowflake is just a cloud data warehouse. And in this case, I have some COVID data that I want to complement this dashboard with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore this information. And basically, I have here some COVID data that is for Australia per month. And I'm just going to load this data into my Power BI dashboard. In this case, I'm going to make it direct. So it just goes straight to the warehouse and it doesn't load it in memory. Once it creates the connection, I can then easily add it into my existing model. How do I do that? I'll just simply gonna go and create a relationship, and I'm gonna say month and month are connected with each other because they share the same month. Power BI will analyze the data, and it will tell me what's the best relationship between one and the other. And in this case, it's telling me that's many to many. That's fine. I'm gonna click OK. And now that I have the data loaded into, so as a summary, this data is coming from Jedox, this one is coming from Snowflake. They're two completely different systems. It could be your Azure SQL data warehouse Synapse, or it could be your SQL server. You can then complement your existing reports with the planning or even actual data or forecasting data that is coming from Jedox. So now that I have that in the report, what I want to do is I want to add a new visualization into this graph. And what I'll do is I'm just simply going to grab my COVID cases, and I'm just going to add that as a line value. And what you're going to see is I can see now COVID cases. And as you know, in Australia, our COVID cases started to spike in July, and it's just going up and so on. So now this report is combining data from Jedox, from Snowflake, in this particular case for COVID data. And I can then, again, the idea is basically there's no limits to what you can do. And again, I can republish it, re-update the report that I have on the web, and basically keep looking at this information on the web. As a Power user, you're probably going to be creating the report on Power BI desktop, but then once you have it done, you publish it, and that's when people will start using it and collaborating. So now that we've done the, let's say, the simple planning, visualization, we enhance the way that we look at the Power BI report, not only with Jedox data, but also external data. Now the idea is, why don't we start interacting with Jedox within Power BI? So this is the other integration that you have between Jedox and Power BI. And right now what you see on the screen is an actual Power BI report that has a Jedox template embedded into the report. So I'm not actually logging into Jedox as I did before. I'm playing with the technology inside Power BI. And this report itself, it's also connected to the same data that I was showing you before. So that means that as I'm doing my planning process, right? So same features, I can do expand and collapse. I can do top down, bottom up. And what I'll do here is I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna be selling 7,500 units of touring bikes. I updated my model, and now I can click that refresh button. And what Power BI will be doing, because again, if you're familiar with Power BI, there's some concepts in the background around direct integration and import. In this case, it's an import. So I just refreshed the dashboard. I can go back here and refresh, and you will see that my numbers are going to change because I'm getting the new data coming from here. I'll just click that again. And basically, again, now I can connect everything in Power BI. I can get the new numbers, get the new values, and continue working with the different dashboards or, excuse me, all different reports that you have. Just to summarize again, right? So the integration from one side is capturing the data that lives in Jedox. The other one is being able to show you that same template inside Power BI. So we're enhancing the way that people are interacting with Power BI by providing the ability to do the actual planning inside Power BI without having you to leave the Power BI environment, right? So if I go back to here, you can see I have my dashboard, I got my planning template, and I can do even more things now, right? It's not just about doing a simple planning as I was doing here, but I can do more advanced planning. And what I'll do is I'm gonna open this one, the integrated planning. And again, similar to what I showed you before, within Power BI, I'm actually integrating the full solution into Power BI. In this case, I'm bringing the same view that I had before, where I can interact and be more. I have more reports to talk to. So we've done the planning, we've done the visualization, we've done the report. The other important thing that you want to do, as you remember that flywheel that Serge was talking before, that we're gonna reinforce that in a second, is I also want to do my forecast, right? Because I've done my planning, I visualized it, I enhance it. Now I want to reforecast. So from a forecasting perspective, Jedox provides you and comes with what we call the Jedox AI wizard. And in this case, I'm going to choose the 7+5. So you can see we have history of data. So we have 3 years of data. We are in July. We are in August, but we closed the month of July. So I want to predict, given what the history that I have, I want to predict what's going to happen in the future. So I just simply define a few drivers, set it up in the background, and I can click the predict button. And what's happening in the background is Jedox is grabbing all that information and it's running multiple models. So it's training different models using AI, and it's providing me with a forecast, a view, a future-looking view, as you see here. What will be the most likely outcome with a certain degree of certainty, plus a lower bound and an upper bound. But of course, I don't want to be just looking at the data here. I want to be able to grab this and visualize it in my dashboard. And again, the concept is the same. I can refresh my particular dashboard. And once I do, and I think I'm having a quick problem here, so I'll just quickly change it to here and I'll manually refresh it. I think it just did. So go here and I refresh my dashboard. And what you're going to see is now I'm bringing that data. Just looks a little bit different because of the axis, but that data that it's my forecast now, that it comes with an AI engine that looks at all the years of the history and a few drivers and it trains that model. It's been pushed into the report, and now I can visualize it. And again, I can enhance the way I'm looking at this information, and I can continue repeating this cycle multiple times. I can start my plan, define my plan, visualize it, enhance it, do a forecast, and continue repeating this. What we're trying to do here is to help you to do this in a more efficient way, so you don't need to rely on multiple spreadsheets. It takes you years or weeks, well, not years, but takes you weeks to achieve that. You can just simply streamline it by just having a few clicks of a button to do so. But it not only stops there, because the forecast is the last piece, but then you might say, but I'm not forecasting gross revenue or units. I wanna be able to have an integrated business planning where I have balance sheet, cash flow, and my profit and loss is made out of multiple components. Well, Jedox also allows you to do that. I'll just show you the simple way. But from a planning perspective, an integrated business planning point of view, you can have multiple models all connected with each other, everybody planning at their own levels, visualizing it, enhancing it. But from a centralized point of view, all these models, sales, production, depending on your type of organization, will flow into your P&L or your sales. And one way of visualizing, I'll just finish here, is it's your driver tree, right? Every single component that you see in the screen, it's connected with each other. It has its own process. You can follow the same structure of plan, visualize, enhance, and forecast. You can use all of the Jedox AI components in every single one of those, and then, like I said before, enhance it by connecting it with every single one of them. So on that note, I'll pass it back to Serge to wrap it up. Thank you.